It's going to be hard to review the R9s without comparing it to the iPhone 7 Plus. But what is shocking is that though Oppo has been pulling inspiration from Apple for years, when it comes to design, the R9s is just more beautiful. Not only is it thinner, narrower, and shorter, it's also 40 grams lighter and feels way better in your hand. You might want to say that Oppo copied design, but really they've one-upped Apple. I've never seen an all-metal phone that has hidden the antenna lines so elegantly. The entire handset is more compact, the bezels are smaller, and we have a bigger battery with a headphone jack. Below the 5.5-inch 1080p display, we have a capacitive touch button which acts as a fingerprint reader that is fast and reliable and has an interesting feature that we're not that keen on. You can register multiple fingers and each can launch a different app. I use different fingers to unlock my phone depending on how I'm holding the device, so it's not useful for me. And until you set up at least one fingerprint, you can't use the home key to wake the phone. Now let's move on to the camera. The Oppo R9s is probably the first phone with Sony's IMX398 sensor. It's definitely the first one that I've had hands-on with anyways. So what separates the 398 from the 298, which is found in phones like the OnePlus 3T? Well, it's a dual pixel autofocus, which is similar to that used in the Samsung Galaxy S7. The sensor has an aperture of f1.7, which matches the S7 and beats the iPhone 7's f1.8. We tested it out in the night market here in Taipei. The aperture lets in plenty of light while the dual pixel offers reliable autofocus, where at times phase detection probably would have failed. What we're seeing are great low light photos that unfortunately lack the same level of detail as the iPhone. They look great, they're a little oversaturated, which I actually prefer. It actually makes for a more punchy photo, but at times we saw an incorrect white balance, which is kind of normal. Having said that, it looks like there are a couple of times where there is more detail on the R9s when you zoom in. But on this photo, the text on the markers is clear on the iPhone when you zoom in. So you can go back and forth on what photo you might think is better, but the iPhone does seem to have just a little more detail, which I think edges it ahead from the R9s. The camera on the front is also 16 megapixel and uses a different Sony sensor with deep trench isolation. And of course, because it's Oppo, we have some beautification options from natural all the way up to doll-like. Apple just wants you to accept who you are, wrinkles, pimples, and all. What's interesting to me is that a lot of the people thought the capacitive touch button on the R9s was more focused and felt of higher quality, and this was from iPhone users. They even thought the setup on the Oppo was more intuitive and fun to use, which I did not see coming. When it comes to battery life and benchmarks, the iPhone is the clear winner. The A10 processor is a beast, and this is actually the most frustrating thing that Oppo has done. If they'd put a Snapdragon 820 or 821 in there, we would have had a real race on our hands. The UI did lag a bit, and multitasking isn't as snappy as we'd like it to be. When it comes to the UI, the iPhone and ColorOS have a lot of similarities. There is no app drawer, and they've finally added native search. Previously, you had to use Google search to find things on your phone. Now you can just pull down and search the phone itself. It looks a lot like what's happening on the iPhone. But interestingly enough, Oppo seems to have taken away a lot of features. Like, we only have the option for ring and silence. There's no vibrate option. Apple takes muting notifications really seriously, so I'm surprised that Oppo didn't follow suit with a customized way to interact with your phone. When it comes to pricing, the R9s has the iPhone 7 Plus beat. It's $450 on Amazon right now, whereas an unlocked iPhone will cost you $770, and that's only a 32GB version. At least Oppo gives you the option for dual SIM or an SD card slot, which is expandable, and the minimum memory is 64 gigs. A $320 price difference is definitely enough to make me recommend the R9s. If you're looking for a really good selfie phone for doing some social and chat, you'll be happy with the R9s. It's not a phone for gaming or having a bunch of really big apps open all the time that you need to switch between. It's a well-built, sexy phone that feels better in hand than the iPhone, and whose camera is good and has better low-light performance than any other mid-range phone out there, and maybe even some flagships. If you're price conscious and looking for a phone that will take you from day to late night, the big battery life and quick charge certainly make this a handset to consider. When a company actually out-Apples Apple, It's hard to do a review and not compare it to the iPhone. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm your host, Nicole Scott for Mobile Geeks.